Hey everybody, welcome to our live event. My name is Brenda K.B. Anderson, and I am a knitter and I'm a crocheter, and I often use these things to help myself relax and get into more of a calm state. And I know a lot of you guys probably do too, because I work over the Creative Crochet Corner website, and one of the perks of my job is I get to see the survey results that come in. When we send out a survey and we try to learn a little bit more about you guys and what you'd like to learn and the things you're interested in. One of the questions is, why do you crochet on that survey? And so many people's responses were to relax, to calm down, to keep calm. I saw that over and over and over. And I just was thinking as I was looking at those results, like, well, I'm certainly not alone. I know there's a lot of people here who do it. And that made me start really thinking about how much I actually do use it for that. And I never really fully realized it. I mean, I think I kind of realized in the back of my head a little bit that I did that. But once I started thinking about how many other people are doing this, I'm like, oh yeah, I actually do. I've been doing this for a long time and I didn't even really realize I was doing it. So today we're going to be focusing on that. I am going to be kind of like dabbling in a bunch of different projects here to sort of give you some ideas of just simple projects you can use for mindfulness, just to help, let the yarn let you relax. And I will also be showing two more projects just a little bit more in depth. So one's a crochet project. It is this project back here. This is a linen stitch scarf. It's very simple. It's a great way to use up scraps. So I'll be working on that, and I'll also be working up this scarf here as well. This is a circular scarf, and it's knit in a tube. So we're going to be talking, I'll be talking you through all of the steps for those things, but also kind of showing you some other things, other ways that I like to, I kind of gravitate back towards some of the same projects when I just need a project to help me relax. So I would welcome you guys to leave any comments in the comments box. Let us know if there's a specific thing that helps you relax, or certain things you have to avoid when you're knitting or crocheting. Let us know and share that with the group. Because I'd be curious to see what types of things help other people relax and if there's some overlap here. Looks like we already have some comments. Thanks you guys for being here, and thanks for all the well-wishers. We did have to reschedule this event to today because I got sick a while ago, and that was a super big bummer. I was so sick I couldn't even knit or crochet, which is just sad to me, because that is something that I do that even when I'm sick. It makes me feel better, and I couldn't do that. Let's see. Janet saying, greetings from the English Lake District. I learned to knit at my grandmother's feet, age 6, and haven't looked back. Came to crochet a lot later, and Brenda, I love your tutorials. Oh, thank you so much, Janet. That was very sweet. And we have a hi from Demetra. Hello. I'm glad that you guys are here. And I see that Belle jumped in and said hi. Hi, Belle. Thanks for popping in. Okay, so first, I just want to talk a little bit about finding the right project. So for everybody, everybody's got different ideas about what they like to do, and the things that help them relax are not all going to be the same thing. So there may be some of you who really need something more engaging. You need to be learning a new skill or trying something where you have to be paying attention to a chart, or doing some kind of complicated increasing, decreasing, or cabling or something like that. And being super fully immersed in your project allows you to forget what else is going on and kind of driving you crazy, or it just puts you in a different mental state. So for some of you, I call this the distraction technique. For some of you, you'll need to find your project. If you function better and you know that finding something that you can be fully immersed in and really concentrating on is going to help you, then those are the kind of projects you should seek out. This particular live event, we're not going to be focusing on that because that's really specific, individual. It just depends on your individual skills, what you would be interested in yourself. So you'll have to find those things yourself. But this is more for those of us who need something that we don't need to be, it doesn't take a lot of concentration. It's also something you can just keep going. You don't have to keep checking back on the pattern instructions or anything like that. They'll be the kind of projects that, it's an easy 1 or 2 row repeat, or something where you can just kind of keep going. I also am focusing more on the things that we as knitters and crocheters enjoy doing. So less purling for you knitters, and for crochet, less weaving in ends and things like that. So that was sort of my mindset when I was looking for these types of projects. Also, they're just the projects that I kind of gravitate towards myself. All right, we've got lots of comments coming in here. Loretta is saying, I'm just getting a spinning arrow. Oh, okay. All right, hopefully that'll clear up for you sometime soon, or you'll be able to pop back in here, but there's always a replay. I know you probably can't see it now, Loretta, but there's, just for everybody who is popping in here, there's always a replay, so you can always go back and watch things if it's not working currently. Okay, and somebody is saying I haven't done it for a while, you need to pick it up again. So pretty. Oh, thank you. And I also learned to crochet from my granny. She kept us busy. Awesome. Julie's saying that there's a snow day, so I can join during the live show. I do not handcraft after happy hour. I see, yes. Let's see. Okay, great. Good. Christine's saying, good morning, love crocheting, so I'd love to follow along and relax. Haha. Excellent. Yes, I hope that you guys find this relaxing, and I hope that you have some ideas to take away from this, just to bring into your life and to help you relax. I mean, we all have those stressors in our life, so it's really important to have some kind of outlet, something to help you calm down. Speaking of that, I've been reading lots of articles on this topic, and I did link some of them at the end of the download. Oh, I should mention the download. There's a free download for everybody. This includes links for the skills you'll need for the projects that I'm going to be kind of going through quickly, but it also includes the full directions for the 2 more in-depth tutorials that I'm going to be doing, as well as a little bit of information on choosing a color palette. So we're going to be getting into that towards the end, how to find a calming color palette, how to choose one. I've got kind of a fun little technique that I like to use for that. So anyway, I linked some articles that I've been doing a lot of research about this and trying to find out what are the links between, yarn crafts and actually, you're being able to calm down, and what your mental state is like and how that affects just your well-being. And there's a lot of really interesting information out there about that. But one thing that I came across over and over again is that repetitive motions tend to calm your body down. So if you just think about it, people do things like pacing or wringing your hands or twirling your hair or biting your nails. They're like little things that you do when you're stressed out, because you have to have some sort of physical outlet to let those feelings out and to help yourself calm down. So I find for me that knitting and crocheting kind of substitute for that. It's a way to be able to do a repetitive motion over and over, and then you can kind of put yourself in a different mental state, and that helps you calm down. You can concentrate on your breathing, you can concentrate on just what the stitches are doing, just watching them kind of appear as you're working up your piece. But there is a very strong connection between those repetitive motions and that, just being able to calm your mind down. Okay, so in our download, I have a list we're going to start out with my knitting suggestions. So the first thing that I'm suggesting is good old garter stitch. Now, this is the most calming stitch work that I can do. I'm mostly a I shouldn't say I'm mostly a crocheter, but lately I've been heavier into crochet. But when I want something that just is mindless relaxation time, I always gravitate towards doing the garter stitch because I love doing the knit stitch. The thing about, if you're not a knitter, garter stitch is when you're knitting on one row and then you turn your work around the other way and then you knit the next row. So you're doing the same motion on both sides. So here I'm working up this garter stitch washcloth here. And it's just exactly the same thing over and over. It just allows you to be able to make those stitches. We're just going to be doing knit stitches all the way across, nothing fancy at all here. And it just allows you to make those stitches and think about something else. And so I find myself when I'm working on something like this, really being able to think about my breathing as I'm doing it. You You can even count your stitches and find out like how many stitches per breath. It kind of helps, like if you breathe in for 2 stitches and then breathe out for 2 stitches or something like that. I mean, you don't want to push it. You want it to be in rhythm with your body. But sometimes I find that just getting those things to sync up somehow helps me calm down. I don't know exactly. I don't know the science between, with all that stuff, but it just somehow helps me. So just knitting up a garter stitch washcloth, that is a great exercise to do to calm yourself down. One little note I had is if you are doing this and you're creating something out of a cotton yarn, I feel like it really helps a lot to have a softer cotton yarn. A lot of the dishcloth cottons that you find in like big box stores, they seem kind of rough to my hands, and that tactile sense can kind of affect how you're feeling. If you have something that's softer, it's not going to be hard on your hands, and if you are knitting something up at a little bit sturdier of a gauge, like I like to do for my washcloths, then I want to choose needles that will allow my yarn to slip really easily, so that way I'm not kind of fighting it. Okay, so along the lines of garter stitch, another suggestion that I had was a top-down triangular garter stitch shawl. And the reason I chose this project was because, of course, the garter stitch is so soothing to me, but also because it's a 2-row repeat, it's super simple, and you can just start once you get started, it's like smooth sailing after that. You just keep on going until it's the size you want. You don't have to keep looking at a pattern. You don't have to keep trying it on or making sure it's gonna fit. You just kind of keep going until you're done. So that kind of takes the stress out of it. And I followed a tutorial that I linked in your download by Jen Lucas on how to make a top-down garter stitch triangular shaped shawl, and it begins with a garter tab. That was the first time I had ever done that actually recently, and I was like, oh, this is a great way to start. So that is linked in your download if you're interested in trying that out, but that's what I have right here. Let me just kind of smooth this out. My circular needle is a little bit stiff, so it's a little hard to see, but I've got this triangular shape here, and in the middle I have those knit ones, and then I have yarn overs on either side here and yarn overs over here, and that's what creates the shaping. So, and Jen suggests to put stitch markers in certain places so that way you remember where to put those yarn overs, which I did, and then the one thing I added was I made the first stitch marker that you come to on the side where you do the yarn overs, I made that a different color. So that's going to prompt me to do my yarn overs on this side when I see the red stitch marker first, and then on the next side I don't do any yarn overs. So let me just show you. I'll just do 2 rows here to just kind of show you how this works. So we're knitting the first 3 stitches here, and then I get to that red marker, so I'm going to slip that, and then I do a yarn over. And then I just knit all the way across until I get to the next marker. So another thing that I think about when I'm knitting something or crocheting something is I will try to use all of my senses. Like for example, right now, I can just hear the little clicking sound of my needles. And I think because I grew up with a mother who knit, that sound to me, those metal needles clicking is just like, it's just kind of transports me back to being a kid, and it makes me feel really relaxed. Okay, so I've gotten to the next stitch marker, and then I'm gonna do a yarn over here, slip that stitch marker to the other needle, and do a knit, just 1 knit here in the middle, slip the next stitch marker, yarn over, and then I'm going to knit all the way across till I get to my next stitch marker. So having those marked areas really seems to help. Obviously you can, once you get your pattern going, you can see where those yarn overs are, you can see them, but it really helps prompt you to actually have to move a stitch marker and say to yourself, oh, I need to do a yarn over here. So, because for me, when I'm finding something to help me relax, I want prompts like that. I want something to tell me like, where I need to do, if I need to do anything different, you know, in one row compared to another, or just adding increases or anything like that, I'm going to want a stitch marker to tell me that. Because I want to be able to kind of allow myself to stop thinking about, you know, to stop concentrating on exactly what I'm doing, but just to sort of like immerse myself in the stitches and how it sounds, and just watching the coziness appear. It just helps to calm me down. All right, looks like I'm running very behind on my comments, you guys. I'm going to pop back in here. Hello from Oregon, trying to teach myself to knit by watching YouTube. Awesome, that's a great way to do it. Oh, and we have a question about my sweater. I did make it. This is a pretty new sweater. I am teaching a class. It's a crochet sweater, and it's called the Big River Pullover, and that's going to be available on Craftsy in the near future. I knit and crochet while I listen to lectures. It helps me to focus and not get antsy. Yes, I have heard other people say this exact same thing, that it really helps you focus to be having your hands moving and kind of making those rhythms. Hi to from Oregon, farmer's wife. Oh, we've got a couple of people from Oregon saying hi to each other. Oh, we have another question about my sweater. Thanks, you guys. I did crochet it. And let's see, good morning to Deborah, and good morning to Ava. And Christina's saying kind of like a fidget toy. It's there to help distract and calm down. Exactly. I mean, I really think, you know, it's a similar thing, because you're just having that repetitive motion, you're able to move your hands, you're doing something with it to let that extra energy out. But the cool thing about knitting and crocheting is that not only are you able to do that and help you calm down, but you end up with like a present at the end. So that is also a really great aspect of this, and why I love this so much for calming down is not only, I mean, do you get something out of it like tangible when you're done, but it also kind of it gives you that self-satisfaction, like I did something today, I produced something today, I created something today, or I was creative, and you see something. You can actually like physically see what you did, which is just, I feel like in this world there's so many things that we do, and so many of us have jobs where we work on something but we don't end up with like a tangible thing, and I feel like it really helps to have that tangible thing when you're done and be able to look at it and be really proud of yourself, and that's kind of you know, like an energy boost, or just a well-being boost. It makes you feel good. Okay, so after you do the one row with those yarn overs, the next row all you do is knit all the way across. So that's why this pattern is just so easy. I mean, once you set it up, you know, after the first couple of rows, it's just so easy to do, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And especially if you put one stitch marker that's different to prompt you, like, oh, this is the side where I do those yarn overs. When you see that at the beginning of your row, then you know, then you can allow your brain to do other things, like just you know, just kind of get caught up in actually the stitches that are forming. You don't have to think, oh, what am I doing now? Oh, what am I doing now? All right. Oh, Sandra, thank you for the compliment. That's very sweet. And Daphne saying, good morning from Georgia. Good morning from North Carolina, expecting snow soon. We don't have any snow. I mean, we do have snow on the ground, but it wasn't snowing today, but it is extremely cold here. And a lot of the schools actually were shut down today because it's so cold here. Sharon is saying they learned to knit from their uncle when they were 8. And 73 years later, I'm still knitting. Awesome. Yep, it's a lifelong love, right? You learn it. Like, I learned how to crochet when I was young. I kind of, you know, and then I stopped doing it for a while and picked it up again in my 20s. And then that's when I learned how to knit, and I've been doing both those things ever since. And Claire says, good morning from Australia. Hi, Claire. And good afternoon from the Netherlands. Just finished work, so now it's time to relax. Excellent. You know, it's so hard for me to wrap my brain around the fact that everybody's at a different point during their day. I don't know why that's so hard for me, but that's so cool that we can all meet up here from all over the world and talk about yarn together and share tips and yeah, be supportive of each other. All right, so I'm going to get to the end of this row and then I'll show you my next knitting idea. All right, there we go. So the third suggestion that I have in the download is to make a broken rib baby blanket. Now it doesn't have to be a baby blanket, it could be a scarf, it could be anything, but I really like the broken rib stitch, and if you've never worked that up before, I'm going to show you just real quick. All you need to do is you knit on one side. Here, let me just untangle my stuff here. There we go. You just knit every single stitch on one side, like we're doing here. This is considered the right side, usually, but both sides look nice. So we have this sort of, it looks like, kind of like ribbing, but then it looks like there's little purl bumps in between the ribs, and then on the back, it almost looks like seed stitch a little bit, because it gets those little bumps, but they kind of look like they're in a nice grid shape, and it's a great fabric for laying flat, for being a nice blanket, a nice fabric for a blanket. And it's so easy to memorize. So this would be for those of you who don't absolutely hate purling when you're stressed out, because there is a little bit of purling on one side. So the first side here, we just knit all the way across, and I'm using super chunky, like a super bulky yarn and these really big fat needles, which I just find very calming in themselves. Like things like that, very chunky yarn is just, I don't know, it gives me those super duper cozy vibes. So I always like to reach for those when I'm just looking for a mindless thing to knit up. All right, so then on the next row, you're going to do knits alternating with purls. And all you have to do to get this started is you just have to cast on an odd number of stitches and then you're ready to go. So we're gonna do knit, and then purl, and then knit, and then purl, and just continue that all the way across. And that is it, that's the whole pattern. It's a very simple. And it's easy to tell what row you're on because the sides both look different. So if you get this bumpy little texture when you pick it up, that means if you're on that side, about to work that side, that means you have to alternate knits and purls. And then if you're on this side where you can see those kind of ribs, those columns of those knit stitches, that's the side where you just knit straight across. And you may find it helpful to put a stitch marker in. So again, like I did before, you could put a stitch marker to mark the front, or you could do a stitch marker to mark the side where you alternate the knits and purls, if that helps to prompt you either way. All right. So the project I really wanted to show you a little more in depth is this one. This is a circular scarf. So it's a big tube. Here, let me just untwist it. It's a big long tube. And the whole point of this is just so that you're knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting, and you don't have to turn your work, you don't have to do any purling. You can switch colors if you like. I am very motivated by color, so to me, I found that this was a very soothing type of project to be switching amongst your colors, back and forth between colors. But you could just do this all in one color or in a color changing yarn, whatever you like. So basically all you need to do is you just take a circular needle that's the size of about the size circumference that you want your tube to be. So this one was knit on a 16-inch circular needle because I wanted a nice wide scarf, but I also have an example here that I'm working up. This is a 12-inch circular needle here, so that's going to be a little bit narrower of a scarf. So all you need to do is you just cast on as many stitches as comfortably fit on that needle. I'm not saying you should pack them in tightly. I'm just saying, like, you just cast them on until it's like the perfect amount for you. So you can, you know how when if you cast on a lot of stitches, there's too many, you have to keep moving them. Or if you don't quite cast, like if you don't have quite enough, you feel like you have to, in order to make your stitch, you have to kind of shuffle everything to get it all ready. You want to avoid those two scenarios. You just cast on as many stitches as feel comfortable. So it should look something like this. And then you just begin knitting. That's it. So I'm going to just start, you can do a little join if you like, but I just start by just knitting that first stitch. and then I just keep knitting and knitting and knitting in a spiral. And so what I wanted to show you here is if you wanted to stripe yours like I did in my example, I just wanted to show you what you can do to keep your stripes from having a jog because, well, I'll show you. So I'm going to add a new color in here once I get to my stitch marker. That's marking the beginning of my rounds, but honestly, the beginning of your round doesn't really even matter that much, and you'll see why in a little bit here. So I'm just going to knit right up to that stitch marker, and then I'm going to add a new color. I'm going to just put that on the right side, and then I'm going to add my new color in here. So I just dropped the old color, it's old news now, just dropped it behind my work, and then I just start knitting with the new color. And I'm going to knit every single stitch all the way around, so nothing unusual has happened here so far. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of that jog once we get around. And because the whole point of this exercise is just to be doing something where you can relax and you can count if you find that relaxing. You don't have to count at all. You can just watch your stitches appear. You can listen to music. You can make yourself some tea, burn some incense, light a candle, do anything that is going to help you. Maybe you need to come up with like a special knitting or crocheting ritual when you really feel like you need to de-stress. You can do some of those other things that involve your senses, and it can kind of help you to relax. So the whole point of this is just relaxation. It's not really about technique or anything like that. But as I was knitting up my scarf, I thought, okay, I'm just going to make some stripes because I've got lots of leftover yarn. I'm just going to keep knitting and we'll add in a new stripe every once in a while. But it started driving me crazy that I could see those jogs. Now, some people are not going to be bothered by that at all, and that's great. Just knit, add in a new color, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you can see the jogs at all. That's not what this is about. But for some of us, like myself, if it's something that's going to bug you and your eye's going to be drawn to it and it's going to somehow detract from the relaxation that you should be getting out of this, then you're going to want to do this little trick to keep yourself from having that jog in your stripes. Okay. So here I am coming up on my stitch marker, or on the very first stitch in my new color. So these stitches get a little stretched out because they're not attached to anything, so I'm just going to kind of tug on that a little. And here we are at that very first stitch of the round. So I'm just going to slip that purlwise. So I'm just going to insert the tip of my needle from right to left into that loop and bring it over. I'm just slipping it. And then I'm going to knit all the way around. And then you will see on the couple of following rounds what we end up doing to, because we slipped that stitch, there's not going to be as many stitches in that column as its neighboring column. So I just want to show you kind of how to easily fix that. This is such a simple way to do this. That's the only reason that I was like, okay, you know what? I actually do care enough to slip that first stitch, and then I'm going to add one more stitch at the end, and I'll show you that in a couple minutes here. Let me just check in here. See if I got all caught up yet. Oh, Carol's asking, how can I ball a hank of yarn by myself? So if you don't have something to, like, you can put two backs of chairs together and put the hank around the backs of chairs and then just start winding it up. You can do it that way. If you are flexible, you can sit on the couch and prop your two knees up, and then you can put the hank of yarn around your two knees. I actually have a video on the Creative Crochet Corner website that's, I'm pretty sure it's a free video to watch of me doing that. Yeah, those are the ways that I would recommend that are the easiest and most, the easiest and less likely to get a tangle, I would say. One thing that I do sometimes, I mean, I do actually have a ball winder and a Swift, but sometimes I don't feel like getting it out. Sometimes I'll just hang it over a doorknob and just carefully wind and go up and down and up and down. I'm just always pulling that yarn and making sure it's not tangling. So you have to have a little bit of patience for that. But once you do it a few times, it's easy. And it's just, you know, easy to find a doorknob to hang it on. You don't have to sit in a certain way or get two chairs together or whatever. Let's see. Oh, Sharon says I use a green stitch marker for the start of the right side and a red at the start of the wrong side. Oh, okay, awesome. That's a great idea. Kathleen says hello from South Dakota. Really cold here and a good time to craft. Yeah. Okay, so let's say you were just going to do a couple of rounds in this color, and then you were going to switch to another color. Now, if we take a look at my stitches here, the very first stitch of my round, there's only one stitch here, and that's because I slipped it. So I made the stitch on the first time I changed color. The second round, as I worked it, I slipped it. So there's one fewer stitch. So what I like to do when I'm doing skinny stripes like this is I will just move the beginning of my round. That doesn't even really matter in this project at all. So I just go ahead and knit that first stitch. And now every column of stitches now has 2 blue stitches in it because I just knit the one that had been slipped. And for this scarf, the cool thing about knitting in a tube like this and when you're switching colors is you can just tie your ends together. I know probably there are some of you thinking, oh, why would you do that? Don't do that, just weave them in. But for this, the exercise is to have fun and to relax. And for me, I don't really want to weave my ends in. So for me, I'm just going to grab neighboring yarn tails and I'm just going to tie them together and then trim it off. So you want to tie them together so that you don't want it to constrict your work or, you know, restrict the stretch of your piece. But you also don't want it to be loose and sloppy, so you end up with a hole, you know, or you can kind of see where those stitches got stretched out. And then I just trim it off and leave a little over an inch or something like that hanging out on the inside. And it doesn't bother me. Even after blocking, I still don't even see it. Doesn't bother me at all. So here you can see this is the beginning of my rounds right here, and you can see how good, this hasn't even been blocked yet, but you can see how nice those stripes look. You know, they don't have a jog in them. You could barely tell that there's just a little bit of, you know, funkiness going on here because I slipped those stitches, but once you block it, you won't even be able to see it at all. So it looks really good. And then I can relax because I don't have a jog in my scarf. And like I said, if it doesn't bother you to have a jog in the color where you change it, that's fine. You don't have to even worry about slipping that stitch. But if you're interested in that, all of that information, how to slip your stitches, all of that information is in your download if you want to take a closer look at that. All right, so we are going to switch over to, oh, and I do want to mention too, to finish up that scarf, the circular scarf, you just keep going till it's the size you want it to be. Then you have 2 choices. So you can either you'll bind off your stitches just like how you normally would. So you'll end up with just an open tube. Here, let me pull these stitch markers out here. So you're going to end up with this open tube. And I did one additional round in a color that happened to match this so that way when I stitched my ends together, it would just blend right in. You wouldn't be able to see it. So I would recommend that, but you know, maybe you're changing colors or maybe you're only going to do it in one color. That might not apply to you. And then you can just whip stitch this closed, but you're going to keep it in this tube shape. Okay, so you're just going to be stitching these 2 layers together, just whip stitching it all the way closed. The other option you have, of course, is you can just wear it as a regular scarf. Just because it's a tube doesn't mean you have to like put the ends together. So if you do that, I would very much recommend just sewing those 2 layers together, you know, just kind of flattening this out and doing a little whip stitch or seaming them together somehow, just so that you can avoid this curling that's happening here. Because even when you block this, it's still going to want to curl up a little bit and it's going to bug you. Well, at least it's going to bug me. All right, and that is it. That's all you need to know about that scarf. Okay, So the next thing we're going to do is talk about crochet. So I've got 3 ideas plus the scarf idea to show you guys. So the first thing I want to talk about is granny square stuff. Let me just try and catch up on the comments really quick here. Ooh, we got so many good mornings and hellos. Thank you guys so much. Hello from South Dakota. Good morning from, or a hello from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Hi. Okay, and we've got somebody who wants to crochet. I crochet and I want to learn how to knit. Awesome, welcome. You're in the right place. Oh, and we've got someone who knits and wants to learn how to crochet. So perfect. Oh, we have a question. How many do you chain at first? I'm guessing you're talking about how many do you cast on for the scarf? For the tubular scarf, and you just fill up your needle. It doesn't need to be a specific amount. It's more just like how it feels on your needle so that everything kind of slides and you're able to knit just easily without feeling like you're fighting anything. Oh yeah, we've got someone who's going to use up some spun yarn, especially leftovers. Perfect on a tube scarf there. Okay. Oh, so cool. Oh, we've got someone saying hi, love from Scotland. I love Scotland. I went there once and ever since I went there, I've always wanted to go back. Okay, thank you guys so much for all these comments. I really appreciate it. Okay, oh, Carol saying, thank you for suggesting using a doorknob to hang the hank of yarn. I have a double door closet. Oh yeah, that's perfect. If you've got the 2, that is a great idea. Even better. Even better than my 1 doorknob closet. Okay, so back to crochet, or into crochet, rather. One thing that people really love making are granny squares. They love granny squares. I love granny squares. The problem with granny squares is you got all those ends to weave in. Some people don't mind, like me. I'm okay with it. But other people will probably not ever finish their project because they hate it so much, and there's a lot of ends to weave in if you're changing colors. So, but you know what? The purpose of this is to relax, so that's okay. It's okay to make a bunch of granny squares that you're not ever going to weave in the ends. That is allowed, because what we're focusing on here is using yarn as a tool to help us, you know, emotionally, mentally, physically, just relax. And so if you're able to do that, then you did it. So that's perfect. But if you know, there's just some other things to consider about the granny square thing. One thing is that you could make a rectangular blanket, so meaning you don't have a bunch of little squares with so many ends to weave in. You'd have fewer ends to weave in, maybe 1 per round of your rectangle. And I do have a link in the download today on how to make a rectangular blanket. I did a video on that a while back on the Creative Crochet Corner website. If you guys are a member, you can check that out. But here's an example of starting out a rectangular granny square. We started in the middle, and then we're going to work around and around and around, and then you can just go on till your blanket is done. You know, you can just keep on going till your blanket is finished. And so if you change colors every round, you will have ends to weave in for every round, which is a lot, but it's not as much as a whole bunch of little granny squares. Another idea is to use a color changing yarn. This one seemingly it's stripes, but they're not uniform stripes. They're not all the same. So that's kind of fun, and it breaks it up a little bit. You know, if I had kept going on this, you'd see like little sections here and there of, you know, kind of color changes that you would go through. So that's just another thing to think about. You might just want to get a color changing yarn and try that out. If it's something where you really want to see those color changes, if you want to make a solid color blanket, that's great too. But yeah, so those are just some things to think about if you are one of those people who really loves making the granny squares. So there's a suggestion for you. The next suggestion I had was to make a circular pillow. And so I'm crocheting this with a very chunky yarn. This is a number 6, and this is an NP or a 10 millimeter hook, but you would use whatever you have. This works for, you know, worsted weight yarn. This works for any weight yarn. I linked a tutorial or like a little blog post on how to make the perfect circle That might sound scary, but after the first few rounds, you set up your circle so that you have these stitch markers in there. And then as you work your way around, you just increase between your stitch markers anywhere in there. It doesn't need to be in a specific spot. So you don't need to count. Once you get in, a few rounds in, you put your stitch markers in and you can just go around and around and around. As long as you remember to make one increase between your stitch markers, then you're good. That is it. So you can make 2 large circles and then get a pillow form and sew it in between, and then the extra bonus is that you have like another cozy, comfy thing around you to help you relax. I'm just going to grab a little water here. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about, of course, is washcloths. Back to washcloths again for our crocheter friends. Excuse me. Okay, so I know lots of people love the double crochet because I think it's just the soothing motions of the double crochet. It makes you, excuse me, it allows you to create fabric fairly quickly, has lots of drape, it feels nice. So, sorry, you guys. I'm still kind of getting over, I feel good, but talking a lot is kind of bringing up that stuff. Okay. Anyway, don't overlook the double crochet dishcloth for helping you calm yourself down or help you get you in a relaxed state. It's so simple. You're just double crocheting each row. But I do have one little suggestion. So when you start off your double crochet, I usually do 2 turning chains because I feel like it looks a little tidier for me, but you could do 3. And then you're going to turn your work. And then instead of making a double crochet here or even here, you can pull up a loop from the second chain from your hook right there. And then you can pull up a loop from the very first stitch. And then you can complete your double crochet. And basically what you just did was you linked your double crochet to your turning chain. Excuse me, sorry. Okay. Okay, so you can make a linked stitch to begin. So you just insert your hook in that second chain from your hook and pull up a loop, and then you can pull up a loop in the very first stitch right here. And then you can yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 to complete your double crochet. So that links your double crochet to your turning chain so you don't get that gap that you sometimes get, those kind of big windows along the side, the sides of your double crochet pieces. That is something that's like little extra credit. You don't need to do that. But it isn't hard to do once you do it on a couple rows. It can become very automatic. But if it's something that's kind of slowing you down or making you have to think, just omit that and just do a regular turning chain how you normally do. And then you can just, go across, making those double crochets all the way across. And it's just, there's something magical about the double crochet. It's in the granny square, but also people really, really just love this stitch. I was doing a lot of research on what kinds of projects people find calming, of course, before this event. And I did see lots of people talking about how they just love double crochet. Like if they could just double crochet in in every project they ever made, it just feels calming to them. So I just wanted to bring this one up because it just has easy motions. You can see where you left off. It doesn't get too tight. It's just a very good basic stitch to be doing, just working back and forth in those turned rows, making a washcloth. Who doesn't need a washcloth? Everybody needs a washcloth. So it can make you feel productive and good to create something handmade and just work something up in a very, very simple stitch. All right, Amanda's wondering if, they say, I've always wanted to try knitting, but always crocheted. Is knitting similar? Yeah, I feel like it depends on the person who would answer this. I feel like it's very much related. And I knit in a continental style because I learned how to crochet first and then I learned how to knit, and that felt more natural to me. So if you are a crocheter thinking about knitting, I would recommend you trying out a continental style of knitting, which they're called pickers or throwers. There's like there's multiple different camps, but main camps of the way that people knit, whether they're kind of wrapping their yarn around their needle and knitting their stitch, or if they kind of put their needle through and just sort of almost grabbing it like you would with a crochet hook. You just kind of use the tip of your needle to pull it in. That's the kind of knitter that I am. So I would recommend looking at that. Let's see. I have a pattern for slippers, and at the end of heel extension it says slip stitch across the extension and tie off. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, okay. I don't think we'll be able to get to that in this, and I'm not really sure without looking at the pattern, but maybe we can do some kind of Q&A. Well, actually, if you're a member, you can ask at Craftsy, or also I think you're talking probably about a crochet pattern. This is Luana. If you're a member, you can send me a message at the Creative Crochet Corner website, and I will answer that for you. I just need a little bit more information about your pattern, I think. All right. Oh, and Sally's going to start her knit tube scarf tonight. Awesome. Oh, and Karen says a granny square makes an excellent prayer cloth for family, friends, and church members. Wait, going through difficult times. Yes. That actually brings up another thing that I wanted to talk about, which was when you are not only are you making something, right? You're kind of using crochet or knitting as a way to sort of get your anxiety out, or maybe you're using it as like a fidget toy or whatever. But not only are you making something, but also if you're making something for someone else, like whether it's somebody that you know or somebody that you don't know, you're going to gift it or you're going to donate it or something like that, you start to feel a connectedness to that person as well, which also has good mental health benefits. You know, while you're crocheting or knitting something for somebody, you are going to be thinking about them while you're working on their project, you know, and be like putting that energy into their project. It makes you feel connected to them. Even if they don't even realize you're doing it, you know, at the time it's going to be a surprise, it still makes you feel connected to that person, whether it's someone you know or you don't know. So that's a really good way. Sometimes when we're having a stressful time, we are not feeling connected to other people. So that's just like another little bridge towards mental health there. Okay, we've got a question about the kind of crochet hooks that I'm using, the multicolored one. So this one is called a dots hook, and this is sold by crochet.com. It's a very nice hook. It's my second favorite type of hook, second to the Clover Amour. They're similar. They're very similar. So if you're a Clover Amour person, you might want to try dots hooks. They're less expensive. I feel like the Clover Amour hooks are they're the perfect hook for me. Like if that's the only kind of hook I could bring with me to a desert island, that's definitely what I would bring. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the other main project in this download. So that's the scarf. Let me pull it off of here so you guys can see. So this is a linen stitch scarf, and it's a great way to use up scraps, but you can also do this in a solid color if you like. So let me just put this over here. This is a very easy stitch pattern. It's a 2-row repeat, and it's very simple. So let me start that out for you guys. You can chain any amount of like an odd number of stitches, and then you're going to add one more. So if you cut that, you're actually chaining just an even amount of stitches. But you're going to chain and chain and chain until your chain is the length of the scarf that you want. Okay, so if you already have a scarf, you can get it out and you can just chain until your chain matches the length of your scarf, or you can just chain it to, you know, like 60 inches or 70 inches, or maybe you want a shorter scarf, you know, something like 40 inches or something like that. You're just going to go ahead and chain until it is the length that you want your scarf to be. So I'm just going to do a mini version here. This is just mostly like a little swatch so you guys can see what I'm doing. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right, so we've got 15, so that's the amount of stitches we're going to be working across. I'm going to add that one more stitch. That's not ever going to be worked into, that's just a turning chain. And I'm going to turn my chain over so that we can work into the bottom of the chain. So if you look at the chain now, there's a whole bunch of little V's all stacked up. We're going to roll those over and we see all those little horizontal dashes and we're going to work underneath those. So we're skipping the first one and I'm going to work a single crochet into the second one. So we just insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. So there's our single crochet and then we're going to chain 1 and then we're going to skip a stitch in our chain. So we're skipping this one and then we're going to do a single crochet in the next chain. So single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1. All right, so we're just going to continue that all the way across and we're going to end up with a single crochet. So here's our chain 1, skip 1, and a single crochet in the very last chain right there. And then we are going to cut our yarn, so we have about 6 or 8 or however many inches you'd like, just hanging out there. That's going to become fringe, so we don't have to weave this in later. All right, so we just finished up doing this row. Then we're going to turn our work, so I'm just going to turn it like this, and then we're going to work in the opposite direction. So we're going to, in the very first single crochet, we're just going to pull up a loop. And then we're going to chain 1, and that's just going to anchor our yarn. And now we're going to start with that same stitch and do a single crochet there. And now you can see we have a chain 1 space. Anytime you go to a chain 1 space, you're going to put a single crochet in it. Okay, so we've got 1 single crochet in the first single crochet. Now here's a chain 1 space, so we're going to do a single crochet there. And then here's a single crochet, we're going to chain on top of it. Okay, so we're just doing a chain when we get to a single crochet, and when we get to those chain spaces, we're going to place a single crochet in there. Chain 1, skip the single crochet in the chain 1 space. Chain 1, we're skipping that single crochet, and then we're going to single crochet into the chain 1 space. So in other words, if you get to a chain 1 space, you're placing a single crochet into it. If you get to a single crochet, like right here, then you just make a chain above it. So you're only stitching into your chain spaces. You're not going to be stitching into your single crochets with the exception of the first and last stitch of this row, okay? So here's our last, I worked into our last chain 1 space. There's 1 more stitch here. So I'm going to put a single crochet in it. Because if I chained 1, it would just be sort of floating there. There's nothing to connect it. So we're just going to make a single crochet into that very last stitch. And then we're going to fasten off, leaving ourselves a nice long yarn tail. And then we're going to turn our work. And we're going to grab another piece of yarn here. I'll take this color. And we're pretty much doing the same thing. So we're going to go in here in this first stitch, pull up a loop, okay, leaving a long yarn tail, and then we're going to chain 1, make a single crochet into that very first single crochet, and now you can see there's a single crochet next. So that means we're going to chain 1 and skip the single crochet. And now here's a chain 1 space, so we're going to make a single crochet into our chain 1 space, and we're making a chain 1 when we get to those single crochets. We're not working into those single crochets, because the only place we actually work into a single crochet stitch is at the very beginning and the end. That's it. So you're going to repeat the last 2 rows, so this row and the row before, over and over and over until your scarf is as wide as you want it to be. And that's it. It's very simple. Okay, so here we've gotten, there's 2 stitches left, so a single crochet there. So I made my chain 1, and now there's a single crochet here, and that's where we're going to end with our very last stitch. Just like that. Okay, and this pattern is written out in your download in case you need to take a closer look at that. And there's also some information on how to add the fringe. So I'll just talk you through that real quick, and then we'll move on to talking about choosing colors. All right, so we fastened off. Let's just imagine, here, let me pull over I've got a scarf that's in progress here. So I've done a few rows in this scarf. But let's just imagine, this was as wide as I wanted my scarf to be. I just wanted a very narrow scarf. So in order to kind of add a little bit of extra oomph to your fringe, because this looks a little bit wispy, which is fine. If you like how that looks, then that's great. For me, I looked at it and I thought, I need a little extra fringe in there. Then you would just take your yarn. Oh, and I think I forgot my cardboard, so I'm going to use this needle packaging here. So you take a piece of cardboard and then you can just wrap your yarn around it, and that's going to give you some nice, it's going to give you a bunch of strands of yarn that are the same length, okay? So you're just going to go ahead and do that, and then you're going to cut along the bottom like this, and now we have a whole bunch of separate pieces of strands of yarn that are all the same length as each other. Then you can take 2 strands, I would say, and then put your hook through near the bottom. You're going to lay those strands on top of your hook, and then you're going to just pull that through. And here we have a loop, and now I'm going to just pull 2 ends through. Leave the other 2 ends so that they're kind of going right through that fabric, and then you can even out your ends, and then you can incorporate the strands that are closest to, the 2 strands that are closest to where you put your hook through. I'm going to incorporate those into the knot that I'm tying. So I'm just going to do a little overhand knot here. Just like that. Okay, and then you would just continue doing that. So you'd grab 2 more strands of yarn, put your hook through somewhere here, pull it through, and incorporate these 2 strands into that little tassel that you're making, basically, or that fringe that you're making. And you can just do that across both ends, and that way you do not have to weave in any ends. It's very easy at the end. We want to make these kinds of projects very easy to finish so that you don't have to worry. At the end, you don't have to think, oh, that's kind of weighing on me that I haven't finished that project yet. You want to make it fun to finish. All right, we've got some more comments here. Let's see. We have, my problem comes with turning and starting a new row. I'm guessing we're talking about crochet. Maybe you're not quite sure about where to insert your hook when you're turning and starting a new one. This is an issue for a lot of people. This is a very, very common issue when you're learning how to crochet, is to know where to put, exactly where you're putting your hook in your first stitch and the last, because it can differ even just depending on different people's patterns. But you have to be consistent over and over. Otherwise, you're going to get a shape that goes like this or a shape that goes like this. And I wrote an article about this. And I actually have a video on this on the Creative Crochet Corner website. I think it's called Why is my stitch count changing? It's exactly about this, and knowing where to put your hook when you're starting and stopping each row. So that if you want to check that out, there's also a blog post that's free to read about the same thing on the Creative Crochet Corner website as well. Let's see. Oh, we've got an I love to knit and I'm a thrower. I enjoy crocheting but need help understanding to read the directions. Yes, I understand that. Yes. And just understanding all the symbols and the shorthand used. Okay. Oh, we've got, please repeat the turning move in the crochet dishcloth. Okay, sorry, I'm a little late in getting to your comments, so we're going to hop back over here. When you're turning your work, so we did our last stitch here, and we're going to chain 2. Some people chain 3, and that's fine. And then we turn our work. Then to bring up to do our very first double crochet, this is called a linked stitch. We're going to go into the second chain from the hook. So that was the first chain you made in your turning chain. So you go in there, and grab that yarn, and then you go in this very first stitch right here. That was the last stitch that we made, the very last stitch of the last row. And we're gonna grab that yarn, and then we're gonna yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. That makes a double crochet, and it's linked to that turning chain right there. So that way you don't have that window between stitches. I hope that answered your question. All right, let's see. I'm so sorry I'm not able to get to all these comments. I am definitely going to be reading through all of these, though. David says, I'm not sure how relaxing this is. I have so many works in progress. I worry about what I should be working on. Oh, yes, I understand. I totally understand. Just look at my table. I understand you, David. Okay. One last thing I wanted to talk about here is choosing your color palette. So color is such a personal thing for people. You know, people have very different reactions to color, but I have also read lots of studies about this, about how color can affect you and affect your mood. And there's been lots of studies done, you know, people who are into advertising or, you know, designing colors inside of a restaurant or whatever, they are very vested in figuring this out because they want to be able to influence how people react to things, right? If you use a certain color, they'll feel a certain way. I don't think that this is true across the board, but I do think that this is true to, you know, to some extent, that color does influence people. But it's hard for me to just be like, well, you should choose this color palette. This would be soothing, because for other people, that's not soothing. I mean, I chose these sort of pastel-y colors, and then there's a dark gray. If you don't really like these colors, you're not going to find this very soothing, right? But I do have a little trick on choosing a color palette that will work for you. And what I did was, there's a website, it's called Coolors, Coolors, coolors.com. And hopefully we can get some screenshots up here of me showing you showing you how to do this. But if you go to that website, oh, here we go. Okay, so if you go to coolors.com, you can click on the little thing in the menu bar that says Tools. Okay, there's like a little arrow showing you that. And if you're watching on Instagram, you might not be able to see everything at the sides here, but just know that all this information with these screenshots, that's all in your download if you're interested in checking it out a little bit further, so you'll be able to see it a little bit better. So you click on Tools, and then the next screen, you're going to find the heading that says Image Picker, and you're going to click on the Image Picker. Okay, so you guys can see that there. So you just click on that part that says Image Picker. And then the next screenshot has a bunch of little information. So once you get to Image Picker, you can click on the bar that says a browse image, and then you can use a stock image that they have. So you can enter in something like cozy or sunset or whatever you think would bring up images of something you'd find soothing to look at or relaxing to look at. You also have the option of using one of your own photos, and like if you have a special photo of like your flower garden or something like that, and when you see those colors, it's going to remind you of your garden, and it's going to make you feel happy and relaxed, or whatever. You can use your very own photos, or you can just use these stock images. So for me, I think I put in something like cozy or relaxing, and then I ended up choosing this picture you can see here of a sunset or a sunrise. And then what happens is it automatically will come up with a palette based on that picture. So it pulls out certain colors. There's like, I don't know how many it starts out with, but you can change the amount of colors that it chooses from. So in my image there that you guys can see, there's 5 different little samples that were taken from the image. So 5 different colors. You can also move around the little circly dots that you can see on the image. There's these little circles, there we go. You can see these faint little circles, and you can move those around to sample different areas, and that's going to change the color palette that you see on the left. That little bar of all those colors is going to change that. And once you're happy with how many colors you chose and which colors they are, and they look good to you in that bar, then you can just click on that little down arrow thing that's next to Export Palette. You can see that blue bar at the bottom to the right. If you click on that, then you can create a collage, and then it'll have the original image, which you can see there. That's kind of sunrise, sunset. And then it will also show you the colors that you took out of it. So on the next screen, you guys will be able to see my final result there. It's got five different colors, and then you can see the little sunrise next to it, and you can kind of reconfigure where that is. That's something that you can save onto your computer, and then you can look at that when you go find your colors. You know, if you're looking for color inspiration. To me, this is just such a fun way to do it, because every time I look at these scarves, so both of these scarves, I don't know if you noticed, they were both the same color palette as each other. They were inspired by this photo. I chose my color palette, and I went and found my, yarn from my yarn stash that kind of looked similar to those colors. And every time I look at these two scarves, I think about this image, because the whole time I was making it, I was looking at that image, and I think it's just been burned into my brain. So now I have this, when I look at these two scarves, it makes me feel like I'm there looking at that beautiful sunrise. And to me, that image just looks so relaxing and calming, and just, I don't know, it's just a very serene looking photo. So I just wanted to share this with you, because I know that for some people choosing color palette can be kind of stressful, but I also know that when you get a color palette that you really love and respond to, that can also affect your mood, and it can make you want to work on your project more. If you're using multiple colors and you're seeing them come together, it's just a really fun way to kind of be able to, you're not just pulling it out of nowhere, to use this color generator. It's very simple. Anyone can do it. I have screenshots leading you through everything that you just saw. That's all in your download in case you need a little refresher of that. But just to help you guys out in case you guys are looking for a little color inspiration. All right, let me see here. Christine is saying, my biggest obstacle when crocheting is that I start to feel overwhelmed with the piece getting bigger as I'm crafting it. It's all over my lap or a bed, and I'm always having to move it around and adjust, and then it no longer feels like something I can do on the go. What would you suggest? Christine, I would suggest working on something that has separate pieces that you can sew together at the end. Unless you are very anti-sewing, then it might not be so fun for you. But when you're making a blanket, if you want it to be something portable, you can make smaller squares of something, or even you can make strips, because strips they're not spread out all over the place, and you can kind of fold it back and forth into your lap. It's not such a big deal. Just imagine a big long scarf, and then you can sew those strips together. That would be less sewing than sewing a bunch of smaller motifs together. You can also, if you're a crocheter, I'm not sure, I'm not sure if you're a crocheter or if you're a knitter, but if you are a crocheter, it's very easy to crochet your pieces together. If you are a knitter, you could also crochet your pieces together. It's a little bit trickier to knit them together, but you can do that also. That is a possibility. Sewing seems a little bit easier to me than doing that. But yeah, definitely look into making motifs or making strips and then sewing them together. That might be a little bit more, a little less unwieldy, I guess, in your lap. And Janice says, I love your color choices. Some I would not have put together myself, but they just work. Yes. You know what, Janet, actually, I would not have put these colors together necessarily, just picking them out. But when I looked at that image, I saw them all together, and it looked so pretty. Yeah, that's another thing about that website. Even though I really, really loved choosing color, that's one of the most fun things for me about designing something is picking all the colors. But if I hadn't used that website and looked at that picture, I don't think that I would have put these colors together necessarily. So that's a really good way. If you're kind of always gravitating towards the same colors and you want to break out of that and try something new, it's a great way to make yourself do that, in case you're always I always kind of choose blues and greens, but I really wish I would find other colors I liked. Well, this is a really good way to do that. Just look at some pictures, see what resonates with you, and then you can choose your colors. All right. Okay, let's see. Claire's asking, when you turn your work, does the chain count or doesn't it count as a stitch? Why is this in every case? So this depends on what the designer tells you. If they don't specify, then you get to decide if you're going to count it as a stitch or not. So I normally do not count my taller chains as stitches. Well, I guess sometimes I do. It just depends on the stitch pattern. But if you're going to count it as a stitch, what that means is if that turning chain is your stitch, you don't work into the very first stitch because the turning chain counts as though it kind of grew out of the last stitch you made in the last row, if that makes sense. Make sure that you skip that then if that's counting as a stitch. Then when you come back across to work into your turning chain, make sure that make sure you're treating that turning chain as a stitch and you are actually working into it. Because that's basically what that means, is when it counts as a stitch, that means you're going to work into it on the next row, and it also means you're not going to be working into that very first stitch unless you're doing an increase or something like that. There's always exceptions, but that's basically what that means. So it just really depends on what you want that edge to look like, what the stitch pattern is doing. If the designer specifies, a lot of times they will. I always specify, but not everybody does. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Looks like we are running short on time, so I'm sorry. I'll have to wrap this up now, but I'm so glad that you guys were here. I'm sorry if I missed your comments. It really means a lot to me that you guys are so active in the chat. I really appreciate that. I hope you guys can take away some things from this live event today that will help you, be calm and relax and kind of like just make yourselves feel a little bit better. That's really what I want to do. That would mean a lot to me. So I'm glad that you guys are here. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Bye, everybody.